the other woman is a bitter, lonely life.
My kids need me.
What about this kid?
Some turn rejection into rage. A girl from the streets plays Russian roulette with a married man.
For the first time in years, she was living the high life. She had it made.
A teen mom-to-be lashes out at her rival.
You stay out of this!
It was just the ultimate episode of jealousy.
I wish I could stay here forever.
And one woman's obsession with another tears a family in two.
Get off me!
She would have done anything to ensure that they could live happily ever after together.
These deadly women are love-struck and lethal, driven to evil because they refuse to play second best. When you dwell on the fringes,
she was the girl who was trying to find something better, didn't know how to get there.
Love can be cheap.
All Brandida wanted was someone to love her.
You threatening me?
And life even cheaper.
She knew that something awful was going to happen.
In Sylmar, in the San Fernando Valley, California, 1988, 52-year-old Joan Dolly's job is to bring joy to others.
She worked at the Hallmark store, so you can imagine she was a part of a lot of people's happiest moments as they go in there and buy their cards.
Dennis has been acting weird lately.
But Joan's own Hallmark moments are few and far between.
I think he's having an affair.
Are you sure, Joan?
Her 32-year marriage to childhood sweetheart Dennis is losing its luster.
Dennis was retired Air Force. He looked like just the average Joe, the family man. He had kids at home.
Why were you so late last night?
An old friend turned up at the club.
Oh, really? An old friend?
As Dennis drifts away, Joan pulls on the purse strings.
You've been going through money like water.
Joan really kept tight reins on Dennis.
I earn it.
Not as much as you spend.
Dennis complained to people that his wife just controlled him. That, he wanted to buy certain things. He wanted a boat. He wanted a jacuzzi. She would always hold the purse strings. She'd always say, no, 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 no. You can't have that.
To earn a little spending money of his own, Dennis takes a part-time job at the local golf course.
People saw Dennis as a happily married man, but they didn't know about his secret life.
In his spare time, Dennis enjoys more vigorous pursuits.
Dennis frequented the prostitutes on Sepulveda Boulevard up in the San Fernando Valley, not far from their home.
Today, Dennis won't even have to leave work. 31-year-old Brandida Taliano walks right into his life.
Brandida was kind of a typical street prostitute, worked in the San Fernando Valley.
Hi. Do you work here?
I sure do, sweetheart.
Brandida is a heroin addict from the wrong side of the tracks.
She was the girl who was trying to find something better, but didn't know how to get there.
Maybe I'll call you sometime.
Do that.
Oh, you betcha.
Dennis does call, and Brandida sees her new customer as a ticket off the streets.
Here was this guy, this Air Force guy, this golf course guy who had a nice house. And maybe she felt, you know what? Maybe this is my turn.
Brandy revels in this extravagant new life. As the months go by, the bill goes up.
Something was happening with Brandie and Dennis far beyond a hooker and a John. I mean, he paid for her apartment, he bought her food, he got her a car.
Dennis spends all his time
They're an expensive habit.
and money away from home. 55-year-old Joan has had enough. In 1991, she's handed a ticket to freedom.
Joan had inherited $70,000 from her mother passing away.
And because it was left as an inheritance, it meant that it was all hers. She didn't have to share it with her husband. So that was her way out.
You're not getting the house.
Yeah, we'll see about that.
She was prepared now to move forward with the divorce because she could then afford to maintain her lifestyle without very much change.
So you expect to get all of your inheritance plus half of my assets?
Divorce means Dennis will lose everything he holds dear, his money and his mistress.
I think Dennis realized his financial life was about to be seriously affected.
He didn't want to be left with nothing. He didn't want to split his pension with her.
You threatening me?
Yeah, I am.
Dennis desperately wanted to prevent his wife from divorcing him because it would have financially devastated him.
On a spring morning in 1991, one of Joan's co-workers calls at their home.
Mrs. Dolly did not show up at the Hallmark store to work.
Joan!
Her friend, who was the owner,
Anybody home?
became deeply concerned and was unable to rouse anybody at the door.
So she let herself in the house and found Joan's body.
Joan has been bludgeoned to death. It looks like a bungled robbery.
The assumption is, well, burglars broke in, and she was startled awake, interfered with the burglary, and they killed her to avoid her being a witness.
Under Joan's fingernails, forensics find human tissue from her attacker. But in 1991, DNA tracing is in its infancy.
They knew there was DNA there, and they'd hoped someday maybe that DNA would provide the answers to what happened.
Joan's husband, Dennis, had an early start at the golf course. The police call him home to break the sad news.
Dennis basically doesn't know anything at all about it. He has no clue how this could possibly happen.
Did your wife appear stressed?
Dennis is not behaving like a man in mourning.
He was absent a lot of emotion that one would expect because your wife of 35 years had simply been brutalized in this fashion.
Days after his wife is buried, Dennis seeks solace in Sin City.
You got this in the bag.
I mean, this was his wife of 35 years. Who does that? Who goes on a Las Vegas holiday right after she's been brutally murdered?
Casino surveillance cameras catch Dennis with a special someone. The police want to know who.
And they're thinking, who is she? I mean, his wife just died. Who's this gal he's hanging around with?
That woman was eventually identified as Brandida. Brandida was living the high life. He was taking her to Vegas, buying things. She had it made.
But before long, Brandy's glittering world will come crashing down.
They searched her apartment and found a bunch of jewelry. Guess who that jewelry used to belong to?
It's the winter of 1993 in LA. For 2 years, Brandida Taliano and her sugar daddy, Dennis Dolly, live it up. Thanks to an inheritance from Dennis's murdered wife, Joan.
2 years after a crime has passed is enough time for the perpetrator to become comfortable, to think that maybe they got away with it.
But their party is about to end. Brandida is arrested on a drugs charge.
Brandy gets arrested, and when she gets arrested, the cops think about that old case involving Joan's murder, and they think also about the advances in DNA.
By now, DNA analysis is common. The tissue found under Joan's nails matches Brandy's DNA. And there's something else tying her to the crime.
During the course of her detention there, they discovered all this jewelry in the bottom of her purse. And it just happened to be Joan Dolly's jewelry.
This isn't Brandy's first stint in prison. A few years earlier, when Brandi Taliano is locked up for theft, she has one loyal visitor, Dennis Dolly.
Hey, how you doing?
Brandida was in and out of custody.
How you think I'm doing? Have you got the stuff?
Dennis started visiting her in jail.
He bought her drugs when she needed drugs.
Dennis wants something in return.
If you got someone, you know, for the big job.
During one of those visits to the jail, the subject came up that he needed help. He needed someone to help him with a big job. And did Brandy know anybody?
His name's Gary. He'll do it for the money.
And Brandy came back with a couple of ideas, a couple of gang members from LA.
The big job is to kill Dennis's wife.
She sleeps on that side. I don't care what you do to her. You can rape her, beat her, whatever, so long as she's dead.
Dennis tells the two men he's employed to murder his wife of many, many years, the mother of his children, that they can go ahead and rape her if they want to. Just make sure she's dead when it's over. He hated her.
But one of the potential hitmen is arrested on an unrelated charge.
Which put an end to this plan because the two gang members needed each other to do the job, so it halted the plan.
With his divorce looming, Dennis is on a deadline.
It became urgent that he do something quickly.
When his low-class lover is released from jail, Dennis has the answer.
Dennis decides to take matters into his own hands, and he needs some help. He needs Brandy. So he tells Brandy to come over late at night, and he lets her inside.
He probably promised her she'd be the next Mrs. Dolly. And she wanted out of her situation.
Dennis Dolly was armed with a golf club. Mrs. Dolly was asleep in the master bedroom. I don't think she suspected anything until she was startled awake in her bedroom to see Dennis wielding a golf club, this strange woman.
To get the life she wants, Brandida must take Jones.
Brandy grabs her and holds her down.
And that's how Brandida's DNA ended up under the nails of Mrs. Dolly.
She's dead?
I think so.
They then scrambled through the house, tossed everything.
They just sort of set the stage in a very poor way that a robbery had gone wrong.
They've stolen Joan's life. Now they squander her inheritance.
Dennis spent his ill-gotten gains on a boat, a jacuzzi, a waterbed, and a gazebo. That's what Joan's life and their marriage was worth to him.
With money as a powerful motive and damning DNA evidence, Brandida Italiano and her lover Dennis are charged with the murder of Joan Dolly.
He was the most average guy in the world. No one could believe that inside of him was the ability to be this evil.
In 1997, Dennis Dolly is convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life without parole. He dies in prison 6 years later.
I don't think Dennis loved Brandy. I don't think he loved Joan. I don't think he loved anything or anyone. Dennis was all about himself.
Brandida Italiano is also convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life. Brandy and Dennis had very different aspirations, but they'd both stop at nothing to get their way.
All Brandida wanted was heroin and someone to love her. All Dennis wanted was someone to have sex with and to help him kill his wife, Joan. And then they met.
A love triangle has 3 sides.
Both of these women knew they were sharing the same man.
My kids need me.
But when that triangle folds,
I gotta go.
Nadia went after the person that she thought had ruined her chance of happiness.
desperation takes over.
Hi, can I help you?
It was a very personal attack, which was driven by rage and jealousy.
Newark, New Jersey, early 2009. Chiron Mowens and Kenny Jones look the picture of happiness.
Kenneth Jones was involved in a long, approximately 8 to 8.5 year relationship with Chiron Mowens.
But the couple has recently split.
They had an argument, some sort of a fight, the result of which was that Kenneth Jones moved out.
Chiron wants a break.
Kids, we gotta go. Come on, let's go.
But Kenny is keen to reconcile.
He loved Chiron. He wanted to be back there with her.
In the meantime,
Hi, what can I get for you?
Kenny's yearning for company.
Coming up.
He finds it when 18-year-old Nadia Venable starts work.
Nadia Venable met Kenneth Jones through a mutual job in the food services industry.
Kenny is only too happy to show Nadia the ropes.
Nadia seemed like a relatively quiet, sort of under the radar, never caused any uproar.
The attraction is instant. And this work romance quickly develops into much more.
The relationship with Nadia Venable got fairly serious quickly. He moved in with her.
Kenny finds comfort in the arms of this younger woman.
I think he probably enjoyed the attention of having the two women interested in him.
And he's happy to pay his way.
I think he provided for her financially, at least to some extent. Nadia was very much in love with Kenneth Jones.
So in love, she doesn't mind sharing.
He had told Ms. Venable from the start that he was always going to be going back to Chiron Mowens, that even though they're separated, he didn't consider that separation to be final.
Nadia was the other woman.
Nadia thinks she knows how to win Kenny's heart.
She became pregnant.
I think we should call him Kenny.
You sure it's a boy, huh?
Far from bringing Nadia and Kenny closer, her pregnancy drives them apart.
What time?
I think the relationship between Kenneth Jones and Nadia Venable was also a lot of back and forth. I think that there was tension between them because of the presence of Chiron Mowens still being in their life.
I'll pick him up. I gotta pick my kids up after school.
Why can't she do it, Kenny?
She has to work. They're my kids too.
Kenneth apparently did like the excitement of being in a love triangle, This one got a little too exciting.
I thought you couldn't live with her, Kenny.
My kids need me.
What about this kid? Kenny.
In April 2010,
I gotta go.
Nadia loses the tug of war when Kenny reconciles with his wife and decides to return home.
The news that he was going back to Chiron came as a complete shock to her.
I think that when Kenneth Jones went back to Chiron, she felt probably very devastated.
Nadia is not just heartbroken. She's also left flat broke.
The electricity bill was due. They were cutting it off. Their phone had been cut off for approximately a week.
He left her high and dry. 6 months pregnant, no money to pay the bills.
As Kenny and Chiron rekindle their relationship,
Oh, heck no.
Nadia's rage smolders.
Kenny, you need to pay these bills.
You need to stay out of our lives.
Nadia hated Chiron. Both of these women knew they were sharing the same man, and they had had a few run-ins.
Go!
Kenneth left Nadia in dire straits. Desperate pregnant women can be dangerous.
Nadia concocts a plan.
What are you making?
She wants to scare off her competition.
Nadia went after the person that she thought had ruined her chance of happiness.
She enlists her 15-year-old cousin to help.
They took Clorox bleach, they poured it into 2 empty spice containers. They decided to go to Chiron Mowens' house, basically to beat her up, was their intention.
Nadia's jealous, jilted, and has nothing to lose.
I think she believed that the only way that she could ever get him back was to take Chiron Mowens out of the picture altogether.
Newark, May 15th, 2010. It's the day before Mother's Day. 29-year-old Chiron Mowens has plenty of chores to do, while her partner, Kenny Jones, is at work.
It was a quiet afternoon at Chiron Mowens' house. They were playing music. She was cleaning. Her 3- and 6-year-old boys were playing with their toys.
Oh, did you make that at school today?
Yes.
Oh, but you know you're not supposed to give this to me until tomorrow.
Oh.
Chiron's not expecting any visitors today. But there's someone at the door. Kenny's ex-lover, 20-year-old Nadia Venable, and her teenage cousin.
Putting her cousin in front of her was a decoy. It was to make sure that they would be able to gain entry into that apartment.
Chiron's daughter doesn't recognize the caller.
Hi.
And that's exactly what Nadia Venable wants.
They asked, is Sweetie there? Sweetie being Chiron's nickname. As they were asking that, Chiron herself came to the door.
Can I help you?
Nadia and her cousin threw bleach in Chiron's face that immediately disabled their victim.
And then just started mercilessly punching and beating her until she fell to the floor. There was a struggle that led into the kitchen. Chiron grabbed a knife to defend herself, but it was taken from her and she was stabbed repeatedly.
It was a very personal attack, which was driven by rage and jealousy.
Chiron's only thoughts are for her children.
I imagine she wanted to protect her children, didn't want them to see what was happening, and at the same time, fight for her life.
For Nadia, it is mission accomplished.
It shows how desperate she must have been to carry this out in such a brutal way. She must have just known what she wanted to do that day, and nothing stopped her.
Let's go!
Nadia and her cousin flee the scene. leaving Chiron mortally wounded.
Chiron was stabbed 27 times. It was necessary for Nadia to obliterate her enemy.
Ms. Mowens managed to crawl out of her apartment. She collapsed right outside of her door, right in the foyer where her neighbors found her.
Chiron's daughter calls 911. She also tells the police she knew the attacker.
Chiron's 10-year-old was able to identify her and tell the police who did it.
The next day, the police issue an alert for Nadia, never imagining the murderer will come to them.
Can I help you?
Yeah, my car's been stolen.
Okay, what was your name?
Nadia Venable?
Police ultimately caught Nadia Venable because her car was actually towed. And so she went to the police station and said, you know, my car's been stolen. And the police said, no, you're under arrest for the murder of Chiron Mowens.
Will you come with me, please?
On trial for murder, Nadia tries to lay the blame on her cousin, but the jury believes otherwise.
Ultimately, jurors believed that Nadia Venable, who had the motive, who was so angry, devised this plan, looped her cousin in with her, drove over with the purpose of beating this woman up, and then at some point, killed her.
Nadia's cousin pleads guilty to conspiracy to murder. Her sentence is sealed.
We can't really discuss what happened to her because she's a juvenile.
In September 2013, Nadia Venable is found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to 55 years in prison, with no chance of parole until 2060.
Nadia got what she wanted, Chiron out of the picture, but Nadia will spend the rest of her life in prison.
Just 10 months after her conviction, Nadia dies behind bars of a seizure, leaving innocent victims behind.
I don't think any person with half a heart could, A, kill someone, but B, do it with their kids just standing there. It was just the ultimate episode of jealousy and what it can do to a person.
Multiple lives were profoundly affected by this murder. 3 young children, 1 unborn child. A young mother is dead, and a man is without his family or his girlfriend over jealousy.
Love is a powerful force.
A passionate and intense relationship.
It can bring people together.
She would have done anything to ensure that they could live happily ever after together.
Get out!
And tear them apart.
Get out!
She needed to eliminate him for her own happiness. "100 miles north of Sydney, Australia, in the quiet town of Maitland, 2007. Renee Burns prepares for a family barbecue.
Steve, can you please give me a hand?
Her partner, 30-year-old Stephen Quire, dotes on their kids, but he struggles to please Renee.
Stephen worked hard, brought home his paycheck, supported his family. He was described by others as a normal, hard-working guy.
Stephen has 1 child with Renee and is stepfather to another.
Stephen Quire had taken over the role of the father to the child of Renee Burns, and it's quite clear that that child worshipped the ground he walked on.
He loved her, and he raised her little girl as if she was his own.
Their guests today are Stephen's sister Amanda and her new partner, 23-year-old Tanya Lane.
Through that relationship is how she fostered relationships with both Stephen Quire and Renee Burns.
Over the next few months, Tanya becomes close to the couple. Renee cherishes this exciting new friendship. Because her own relationship is disintegrating.
I'm not a tea towel.
Oh, come on, my hands are dry.
Get off me.
What's your problem?
You.
They argued a lot, they fought a lot. Neighbours said they heard them fighting a lot.
She's not the only one with problems.
Hey, I'm so sorry to hear about you and Amanda. It's for the best.
Tanya Lane's relationship with Amanda had ended by then. Tanya was spending a lot of time at the Rutherford home.
I've been thinking about you.
When Tanya and Amanda break up, Tanya turns to Renee for comfort.
Sorry,
But she wants more than a shoulder to cry on.
wanna go back to my place? Yeah.
Renee and Tanya became lovers.
They went to great lengths to conceal the relationship. They purchased mobile phones.
That one is yours. Don't let Steve see it, okay?
Duh.
For the specific use of communicating with each other.
Hello?
Hi, sexy. Wanna come over to my place?
Yes.
Renee Burns had commenced a relationship with Tanya Lane, a passionate and intense relationship.
I wish I could stay here forever.
You can.
Tanya is head over heels.
What about the girls?
But Renee won't leave her kids. For Tanya, a part-time lover is not enough.
Tanya Lane was besotted with Renee Burns and would have done anything to keep the relationship going.
On December 23rd, 2008, Tanya asks for a meeting with her lover's partner, Stephen. Intrigued to know what's going on, Stephen agrees to a late-night walk.
They walked away from houses. They walked away from where people might be able to see what was going on. All of a sudden, this four-wheel drive emerged.
A man got out and shot Steve in the head.
The gunman turns to Tanya. He doesn't shoot her. He abducts her.
She was only detained for a matter of minutes before this man wearing the balaclava released her.
There was no demand for ransom and she wasn't hurt.
Incredibly, Stephen survives the shooting. But the police can't trace the gunman.
No one was ever arrested or charged in relation to the shooting.
Hey, Dad, we're really hungry.
I'm gonna order pizza.
If Stephen expects sympathy from Renee, he doesn't get it. Instead, he's left to deal with the kids while their mom is missing in action.
Steve was very frustrated and angry.
Where have you been?
Met up with Tanya. Went for a drink.
A drink? It's been 4 hours.
We got talking. I actually had some fun for a change.
The relationship deteriorated.
Some fun? Why are you thinking of changing sides?
You're pathetic.
Stephen doesn't realize how close he's come to the truth. Tanya's concocting a way to have Renee all to herself.
Love triangles can be, and frequently are, dangerous.
January 2010, the country town of Maitland, Australia. Lovers Renee Burns and Tanya Lane are trying to keep their affair quiet, but they can't hide their passion.
Tanya Lane was there a lot of the time, and a lot of their neighbours and friends suspected that something was going on.
It's him. He's early. Get dressed.
Renee Burns' partner, Stephen Quire, ignores the gossip until he comes face to face with the truth.
Steve,
The hell?
She doesn't love you. It's over.
Steve, let her go.
Get out!
Ted, go. It's okay.
Stephen Quire banned her, said that he didn't want Tanya Lane ever coming back to the house again.
Oh, well, aren't you just the hero, you big man?
When Steve found out that Renee was involved intimately with Tanya, Steve and Renee began to fight, not only verbally, but physically.
Stephen is now convinced of one thing. Tanya was behind the attempt on his life.
Stephen believed that Tanya Lane had lured him to that location.
Steve believed that Tanya had been the one that shot him, but he stayed around. He forbid Renee to see Tanya.
The two lovers can't bear to be parted.
You okay?
Yeah. Kind of.
Leave it to me.
In late February 2010, Tanya and Renee finally get their wish.
Renee Burns moved out of the house and moved in with Tanya Lane.
Can I get you water?
But their newfound bliss is shattered when police come knocking.
So when did you last see Stephen?
They bring sad news.
Stephen's dead.
Stephen Quire has been found dead.
His body was in a state of decomposition at the time it was found in the national park.
He had a gunshot wound to the chest and has been dead for weeks.
Our focus was, well, who was Stephen Quire and why would someone want him dead?
Why are you asking?
His former partner, Renee, seems unfazed. She and the kids haven't seen Stephen for a month.
I thought he'd left.
The least Renee could have done was report her husband missing to the police, but that didn't occur to her.
The police smell a rat.
They were very suspicious immediately that both women were involved.
There's no evidence linking either woman to the killing. Until detectives discover Tanya Lane has recently been shopping for a gun. An ex-con tells cops he supplied her with a unique weapon.
He said I was able to obtain a gun for her and sold it to her for $700.
It was a World War II flare gun that had been modified to fire shotgun ammunition.
Tanya Lane is charged with murder. The police believe Renee lied to protect her lover, and she's charged as an accessory to murder.
Both Tanya Lane and Renee Burns colluded between each other to invent false stories as to the potential whereabouts of Stephen.
With both women proclaiming their innocence, prosecutors must piece together Tanya's murder plot.
She planned this killing. She travelled to the home of Renee Burns and Stephen Quire late in the evening. She went into the house.
Tanya Lane was desperately in love with Renee Burns and would have done anything to ensure that they could live happily ever after together.
After the murder, Tanya dumps Steve's body and the gun. In court, Tanya insists she's innocent. But in prison, it's a different story.
Tanya Lane had made a telephone call from jail where she admitted that she was the shooter.
Her own words seal Tanya's fate. In August 2013, she changes her plea to guilty and is sentenced to 17 years behind bars. Renee Burns pleads guilty to accessory to murder after the fact. She receives 4 years in prison.
Renee Burns definitely knew about the killing, but the evidence is fairly sparse as to where she was and what she knew and when.
Tanya's dream of being with Renee comes true when they are briefly incarcerated together.
So it certainly appeared that the relationship continued whilst they were on remand and in jail together.
It's a final disrespect to the memory of Stephen Quire, a loving father who stood in the way of a wicked obsession.
Steve was an obstacle. Tanya needed to eliminate him for her own happiness. And that's what she did.
These deadly women would do anything to be number one. Brandida Taliano thought murder would bring romance and riches. Nadia Venable tried to reclaim her lover by eliminating her rival. And Tanya Lane destroyed the one obstacle in her path to happiness. All three executed cold, cruel acts, so they would no longer be second best.